Welcome into Beyond Sunday. I'm your host, Luke, and I am joined by Emery Robbins. Emery is our student ministry worship coordinator here at the Springs. Emery, I appreciate you coming on the podcast with me, man.
Dude, thanks for having me, man. I'm super excited.
Last week, I talked about that, the Springs has had a busy last couple of weeks with Gathered 25 and then Decrease weekend for students this past weekend. And you led worship at your first ever Decrease. In our all-staff meeting this morning, we talked about how the last Decrease that you attended, you were actually just attending as a student.
Yes, sir.
And now you got to lead. What was that like for you, going from what you know at that experience is like? I'm sure at your last Decrease as a student, all the students worshiped at the front of the stage at the bump out like they did this past weekend. What was it like for you to be on stage after being down there at the last Decrease that you were at?
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a surreal thing, man, because it was only 2 years ago. It feels like it was forever ago.
Right.
But I was 17 when we had our last Decrease, and we kind of took a little break from it for like, I don't know, a year or two. I was 17. I was a senior, and I was just a kid. I mean, I'm still kind of a kid now. I feel like, but I'm just a bigger kid. But man, now I'm 19, and I have the privilege of being the student ministry worship coordinator. And there's just something about being able to lead students in worship that is extremely powerful. Students are drawn to it. They love the energy. They sing, they dance, and it's all acts of worship. And I think it's the coolest thing I've ever gotten to experience.
What was it like for you as a student, your last Decrease, as far as worship? Do you remember the worship experience? Was there a part of you that was like, I need to make sure that this meets the quality of what I remember Decrease worship being?
Oh, dude, absolutely.
Yeah.
Decrease has always had, all of our camps and events for students have always had a huge bar that's been set, whether that was by Ross, who was a student coordinator when I was there, and then Andrew, kind of like while I was an intern. They both set an extremely high bar for me.
Right.
And so that taught me a lot. It taught me a lot of do's and don't do's, which is great. And I think you do that in all aspects of your life. And it was a lot of fun.
And you and I, we're spoiling a little bit here, but you and I both grew up at the Springs.
That's correct.
And so grew up doing the student ministry things. Would you say that you share the same experience as me of like, you walk away from those camps and you're always just on fire for God, and it's such a used term, but it really is like the epitome of it?
Oh, yeah.
Would you say that was kind of your experience? And I really wanted to just have a quick conversation around like, why do you think that youth camps, for probably parents listening right now, maybe some students are tuning in because they saw Emery Robbins was in the title and they know you. But why would you say that is? Like, what curates that environment of just a spirit-filled environment?
Absolutely. So I think I'm a strong believer. Me and you, we were lucky. We grew up at church, specifically Church of the Springs. We've both been going here pretty much our whole lives.
Yes.
What's cool to see is it's cool to see your friends. You have friends, maybe they've been here too their whole lives, or maybe they've been coming for a few years, and there's some, and then this is their first time ever being in a church, and the only reason they came was because there was a sleepover that was going to be at someone's house.
Right.
And sometimes that's their only reason.
Yeah.
And so getting to see them get excited about Jesus toward the end of the weekend, like they walk in at first and they're just like, they're just not moving. And then toward the end, they're raising their hands, they're surrendering everything that they have.
Yeah.
It's one of the coolest things in the world. And like you said, that trickles down to parents, like for real.
Yeah.
In Matthew 18:3, we're called to have a childlike faith. And I'm a really strong believer in that. And that sets a precedent with kids. Sometimes they get scared in front of their parents, like, I don't know if I should raise my hand. I don't know if, they've never done that. I don't know if I can do that.
Right.
And I've heard more stories of parents becoming more like that.
Yeah.
Because their kid has, because of a camp or something like that. And so it's just cool to see the trickle effects.
And it's funny you say that. You talk about worship, you talk about a childlike faith. I had pretty much an identical conversation with Sergio Torres, who played drums for Decrease on the final night.
Shout out Sergio, you were outstanding, my bro.
He was incredible. And I was talking with him on the way out after that last session. And I just said, like, we just started talking about how passion-filled these students are during worship, right? They see their friends lifting their hands in worship. They start feeling comfortable because it's contagious. And it's like, man, why can't we be like that on Sundays? Like, why can't every adult in the room, obviously it's hard because you've got adults that have never been to church before. They're trying to figure it out. But I do feel that people who have been going to church for a long time and are comfortable, if you are not worshiping and lifting your hands and being a light for others to see, oh, I have the freedom to do this, then what are we doing? Like what are you really worshiping at that point? And like you said, like having a childlike faith is exactly what I said to Sergio, where I was like, you think about just these are kids. And when we have like an organized, hey, we're going to go to this service together after camps.
Yeah.
There's the whole section of students with their hands raised and like it's like almost like they're worshiping more maturely, but yet a childlike faith than the adults in the room.
Absolutely.
And it's an awesome example that gets set. And it all starts with how students learn how to worship is through student ministry.
Absolutely.
And with that energy that they have and the passion they have and just the new lease on life that they get when they accept Christ and especially at a camp.
Yeah.
But it was awesome. This past weekend was incredible, from the worship to the teaching. I know there's been a lot of talk about Noah's last session and how powerful that was, because kids loved it because he smashed mirrors. And I don't need to provide too much context, but basically he was destroying the things that basically made kids feel like they were unworthy of love from anybody or from God. And it was super powerful, but so were all of the teaching sessions. I think everybody killed it that had time on stage. So yeah, and I want to cut real quick. I told you before, I was like, I don't know if we're going to touch on this or not, but I'm sure people listening might know, but some might not, that you were on American Idol. Was that last year?
Yep, last year around this time.
Does it feel like it was last year, or does it feel like it was a lifetime ago?
It feels like it was an eternity ago. Yeah, it really does.
And so Emery, I'll now kind of fast track the story a little bit, but Emery was essentially auditioned on video for producers, I assume, with American Idol, right?
Yep.
And then they said, hey, you're great. Why don't you come to one of our auditions? So naturally, as you can tell with his boots and his camo, he decided to go audition in Nashville.
That was it.
So Emery went to Nashville and got to audition for, I don't know if the judges are different now, but who were the judges that you auditioned for?
It was Katy Perry, Lionel Richie, and Luke Bryan.
Yeah, and from what conversations we've had, your leading up to that audition was a chaotic day, to say the least.
Oh, extremely.
Filled of things and naturally it was TV at its finest.
Oh, yeah.
Where it's like, hey, you're promised one thing, but really like, actually, can you sit here for, how long were you there at the place waiting for audition?
So the entire process took about 3 to 4 days.
That's so crazy.
And it was it's just insane. You just go into this kind of hotel conference room thing, and you just sit there and you could be there for hours and they don't tell you a single thing. And it's cool how you truly have to you literally just have to trust God to the fullest extent. Like, you don't know what is about to happen.
Yeah. And to put it that way, right? Like, you don't know what's about to happen. You didn't even know if or when your audition would air.
No.
You didn't know anything.
No, nothing. They don't tell you anything, man.
But did they did a whole like run through with you as far as like an interview and talking to you? Like they did the whole piece.
Dude,
they just never aired it.
They do B-roll. They do like silent footage where you're walking in a park and it's like, okay, now look to that bird up in the sky. Super dramatic stuff.
Yeah.
No, dude, they literally like, and that's all the days like leading up before your actual audition. So you don't know what's going on. And they do it with everyone.
That's crazy.
Out of 60,000 people that auditioned, they choose 400 to go audition in front of the judges, which is crazy. So they have to do this for 400 people, which is still a lot.
Yeah.
And man, like, they don't even tell you you're about to sing until like 30 minutes before. It's like literally a producer walks up to you, and then he literally points at you and goes, come with me. It's like, oh.
How nervous are you leading up to that moment? Is there any paranoia about, what if I catch a cold? What if I can't sing? Like, do singers get that paranoia, especially with an American Idol audition?
They definitely do.
Yeah.
I was more worried about breaking a string than anything on my guitar.
Yeah.
But dude, also at the same time, your adrenaline is running so high, and it's honestly a lot of times with like new puppies and new dogs. If you take them to a new house or a new location, or you travel with them, like, they don't know what's going on for the first few days. Like, it's like scientifically proven. Like, they're confused. They're like dazed by the whole situation. That's kind of how everyone who's in that audition room feels. Like no one knows what's going on. No one knows what's happening. It's all brand new. And everyone's just kind of just standing there, like with their head in the clouds. And it's like, who's going to get plucked out next?
Yeah.
So
what was the friend making process like, relationship building process like, or networking when you're auditioning and leading up to the audition? Like, did you mainly make friends? So the spoiler here is that Emery made it to Hollywood and then ends up making it top 50. Was that correct?
top 50, that's correct.
And then right before they go to Hawaii is the cut that you got cut at.
I just wanted to go to Hawaii, man. That was it.
That would be what I wrestle with.
That was it.
Man, I just want to go to Hawaii.
Disney resort. That's all it could have been.
Man, did they lay out like, okay, if you make it to Hollywood, like, could anybody go with you to Hollywood, or was it just you?
So no, it was just me.
Yeah.
They literally, they sent my flight information about 6 hours before the flight took off. They just told me to be at the airport at this time. Like it's like a kidnapping movie.
Right.
Honestly,
they operate like a mob.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
And then when it's leading up to the time where you're going to potentially go to make the Hawaii rounds, are you told anything about it? Like, could you have taken anybody to that, or is it everything is solo so that nobody knows anything?
So we do 3 total songs in LA, and the first 2 were solo.
Yeah.
And then the last one, when you make it that far, they give you an opportunity to invite your parents.
Okay.
And very long days, very long nights. You film for almost 12 to 14 hours on these shows.
That's
and
crazy.
It's insane. And so I got out at about 1 o'clock in the morning, and I'm exhausted at this point. I don't care what happens.
All right.
It's the big cut. They're going to cut like from 120 people to 50. And at this point, I'm like, it doesn't even matter what happens. And what they did was they split us into a bunch of different groups. And so the Nashville group was the biggest out of all the 120 people that got to go. There was probably 60 of us. And so the first group went, and it's basically the judges are like, all right, we're going to call your name. You're going to go to side A or side B. And the first like crew that went, they cut like 45 people.
That's crazy.
And I was like,
and you made it through that one.
Holy moly. So I was still in the seats with like 12 people.
Oh.
And so I was super confused. Like only like 3 went through. And so I'm like, why am I still in the seats right now? And then they called the rest of us out. It's like, all right, you go to side A, side B.
Yeah.
And I'm looking next to me and I'm like, there's no way either they get cut or it's like, I'm with him. So there's no way I could get cut. It's like, this is weird. And so and they're like, both sides are going through. And that's where, if you actually look back, you can see me like, I just fall to my hands and knees, man. It was crazy. And then immediately after that, I call my parents and my girlfriend. And I'm like, listen, guys, I would never ask you to do this. Like, I know it's a lot of money. I know it's a lot of travel.
Yeah.
But you're allowed to come if you want to.
Right.
And it's super unlike my parents to be spontaneous and crazy. Like, it's just kind of everything they're not.
Yeah.
But dude, they just dropped everything.
Yeah.
And they were like, we'll be there, Emery.
Yeah.
And it's
their kid was on American Idol.
Yeah.
It was, you only get that one chance once.
It just meant the world to me, man.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It was great.
And what was we're spending more time on this than I really wanted to, but I'm genuinely interested.
Yeah.
And this is actually what's happening, exactly what Emery told me would happen. He's like, we can talk about it, but it's impossible.
You're going to go into a rabbit
in less
hole.
than 10 minutes. And I grew up watching American Idol. I love music. I love Emery Robbins. So I have a lot of questions for Emery. And we've had a conversation before, but there are so many ways this conversation can go. So your parents came out, right? And then you have the song, and then this was the final one, right? Where you did get cut.
Yeah, in front of a live audience.
Jeez.
And then that's crazy. You get to play with Katy Perry's band. They're like
that is wild.
Straight out of recording studios, and you show up and play. And then a whole day goes by, and they call you back, and that's when Seacrest does all the cut stuff, and he's like, "All right, guys, we're gonna go one by one," and you walk in and you sit down on chairs exactly like this with other people and in front of the judges, and they either tell you yes or no. And I was very intentional with how I wanted to be with that. I didn't want to be disappointed with the performance I had given, because at the end of the day, I was extremely blessed to even make it in the position that I was.
Yeah.
And two, I was going to use this for good.
Right.
I was truly going to use this for good.
Yeah.
And so, a lot of times musicians are very passionate people.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of them got cut and they're in tears or they're upset. They're cursing at the camera, whatever it is.
Yeah.
They're being dramatic. And I get cut and I'm just smiling. And I'm like, thank you guys for this opportunity.
Wow.
And I'll never forget Lionel Richie. He hugged me and he was like, we've never had a reaction when someone gets cut like that. And I was like, this is, I could get cut now, but at the end of the day, I serve such a higher purpose and such a higher God.
Right.
That at the end of the day, this is great.
Yeah.
But it's just another thing on an agenda.
Yeah.
So
yeah, incredible. And which judge was Lionel Richie your favorite judge to talk to? Because I remember we talked and you've had downtime. You had downtime at the trucks and snacks and whatever to talk to them. Which one did you grow to like the most?
So Luke and Lionel were definitely awesome. They're homeboys, man. They're like best friends in real life. Lionel is definitely the most personable. Luke is definitely the most confused. You'd be playing or singing, and like Luke would just be like, and then you'd see a producer just go, and then he would just lock back in on you. But I had most in common with Luke just because of
you're wearing a camo shirt and boots right now.
Yeah, I guess you could say that maybe. But Lionel was a great man, and Katy was great too.
Just probably not a lot of things to relate with Katy Perry.
Not at all. No.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my gosh, who are you wearing?
Both raised in church.
Yeah.
There's that.
We actually did talk about that.
Really?
Yeah, and it was cool to see how God is working through her as well.
Yeah.
Someone who's obviously been reconstructing her faith for a long time,
Right.
probably, and that looks different for everyone.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of faith-based people on American Idol, especially contestants.
Right.
And it's cool to see those little, basically like little jabs. Like I told her I was I worked at a church. That's what I came in with. And she gave me a little wink and a head nod. And I'm like, all right.
Yeah. Yeah. So that never aired. Your audition never aired, and there wasn't really much airtime in general for you. But did they ever reach out with like, hey, here's your audition? Did you ever get any of that?
No.
That's crazy to me.
I don't think I ever will until the day I die.
That's crazy.
So,
man, did you try to track that down at all? And like after you saw that you weren't going to be on at all, really?
Man, I asked. It was tough because out of everyone in the top 50, there was only 3 of us that didn't get aired, which is frustrating.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, like I said, I wasn't going to let this consume me. I wasn't going to make it. Number one, I never wanted it to be my personality. I still don't want it to be my personality.
Right.
I love talking about it. It's been a great experience where God's been super faithful. It's something that I wasn't going to let define me. And I chased it for a second. And then when that door was closed and God said no, and I was like, all right, how can I serve you? How can I help grow your kingdom? Yeah. Because that's all this has been for anyway.
All right, Emery. So we'll transition away from the American Idol stuff, even though I need 30 more minutes to talk about it, but we're not going to do that. I talked about earlier that you and I both have been at the Springs for essentially our entire life. Were your parents coming here when they had you, or was it when you were little? Like, when did you start coming to the Springs?
Yeah, so I've been coming here my whole life. My parents came out of college, and it's actually funny. So Pastor Ron was my dad's youth pastor at First Baptist Church.
I didn't know that.
35 years ago.
Yeah, because he was a lot of people's youth pastor at First Baptist. Yeah. And was it at First Baptist Orlando or Ocala?
Ocala.
Okay. Yep. Yeah, because I know that there are people that even are at the Springs in First Orlando. My dad was their youth pastor there. Yeah. So, wow, that's awesome. And then how long this is kind of a two-parter. When you came on staff, which wasn't that long ago, you were, 18 at the time?
I was 18.
Yeah. So was it something that you were called, like you felt like, oh man, I'm going to do this because I'm called to do this? Or was it kind of, this is really just like, I feel like this is the next thing, but I don't know that I could see myself doing this for a long time?
So when I was actually asked to be on staff, for not worship. It was for maintenance and facilities.
There you go.
Someone here had found out I worked at a cabinet shop over the summers in high school, And they're like, we have a shop. You should really come help us like make stuff / clean toilets on the side. And I was 18 and I needed a job because I was going to enroll in college, in community college next year. And so I was like, sure, why not? I need something to do.
Yeah.
And then from there, while I was doing that, they were like, hey, you also want to be an intern for worship and production? And I was like, sure, why not? Let's do it.
Yeah.
And then from that door, once I came home from American Idol, we just had some things moving around. It was like just God's perfect timing.
Yeah.
And they were like, do you want to be the student ministry worship coordinator? I was like, let's do it.
Yeah. I forgot that you and I both share the commonality that we were once both in maintenance and cleaning.
That's it.
One of us probably much better at that than the other. I'm not the one. I will say, so shout out to Marion Mulkey, who we will have on this podcast soon, because I do, from talking with Marion and also hearing him in even all staff settings, he's got a lot of knowledge, a lot of wisdom, and follows the Lord closely, and has a large family as well. And I don't know how he does all the things that he does. He truly is superhuman to me. So shout out to him. I will say aside from him being a great person, one of my memories of Marion was at his lunch in his office. I walked in one time and he was watching cartoons while eating lunch.
He loves The Simpsons.
The Simpsons. So for me, I learned a new cartoon, Pinky and the Brain. Old cartoon. I had no idea what it was. And so when I first came back on staff here, we had been away for a couple years in Omaha, Nebraska. We moved back, and when I see Marion after I've been on staff for a couple weeks, I looked at him. I said, "You still watching Pinky and the Brain?" And he goes, "Oh, I'm always watching Pinky and the Brain."
I love that guy.
So shout out to Marion, and I do need to have him on the podcast for sure. So kind of, it feels like you were just kind of putting one foot in front of the other, getting on staff here at the Springs, being in maintenance, just doing it really to do it at first. Then you get offered the where you're at now, the student ministry worship coordinator position. Was there ever a point then that you felt like, oh man, I'm actually called to this, or I might be called to this? Like, when did that door start to open to where you were like, I could see myself doing this for more than just a job?
Yeah. So it actually started when I was young. I had multiple people tell me, oh, you're going to work in a church one day. You're going to, like, I see it happening.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's not going to happen. I'm going to be completely honest with you. That's not me. That's not going to happen. And just slowly, it's just funny how God reveals himself, man. Like, just little by little, he's going to pick at you little by little. He's going to pick at your heart. He's going to pick at you in situations. And it's a good picking thing.
Right.
And man, just like door by door by door has opened. And it's to a point where it's like, it was probably about 2 years ago, probably honestly when I came home from American Idol. Yeah. And I was like, I want to do this.
Well, because at that point,
different kind of thing.
For you, it was probably almost like an I've made it, or like I've achieved one more step in like the music career. And so at that point, you're like, how do I use it?
Yeah.
Right.
No,
and was that kind of the thinking of, okay, I've achieved this big thing. That's awesome. But how do I use this to, whether it's my advantage or to give glory to God? Like, what's the next step and how do I use it? So I'm sure that played a huge part in your calling.
Yeah, man. That was literally it. It was the next step was, how can I use this for good? How can I continue? Yeah. Obviously, God has given me the skill set and the assets to do this. Right. And how can I continue to honor him and do what I love at the same time? And there's no greater combination than what I'm able to do. Yeah. And as far as I ask everybody that comes on for the first time to talk about this. So you've been on staff now for a year or more at this point? It'll be 2 years come August.
Okay.
August, like 1st.
Yeah. So in those almost 2 years, what would you pinpoint and say?
Actually, May. I lied.
Really? Sorry. May coming up.
Wow.
We're almost there.
That's crazy.
Almost 2 years.
Yeah.
So in those almost 2 years, your favorite moment on staff here at the Spring so far, whether that's on a Sunday at a camp, outside of that, during work hours, not during work hours, like what's your favorite moment that you would tie to the Springs?
So when I was hired here, it was by our executive pastor, Randy Smith, and he oversees all of like facilities, like things like that, maintenance kind of things. Right. And if you haven't met Randy Smith, I encourage you to check out our Southwest campus on a Sunday and just go and experience Randy in his full element.
Yes.
But Randy asked us 2 questions when we got hired. One, what was our faith story like? And, have we given our lives to Jesus? And then the second was, what are we doing August 4th? And it was me, one of my best friends, Kyle, one of my best friends, Ryan Murray. Yeah. And we were like, that is such a weird question to ask 3 17-year-olds that you just met. And later on, like, he just never came back to it. And then we went and asked him, we were like, why did you ask us during our job interview if we were free August 4th?
Right.
And he goes,
did you all tell him yes?
Oh, yeah, we just said yes. We're like, yeah, we're free, sure.
Yeah.
And we went up to him. He looks at us and he goes, yeah, my daughter, she lives in Fort Myers. She goes to school at Florida Gulf Coast.
Yeah.
And she needs to be moved out of her apartment. And so you guys are coming with me. And we were like, what?
It's the most
like, you're
Randy
like a 60-year-old man. Why aren't we going with you?
It's the most Randy story ever.
Dude, it was great. And so we loaded up we have like a work maintenance vehicle, one that shouldn't go over like 50 miles an hour because it's just raunchy. Yeah. And we got a trailer on the back. And it took us like 5 hours to get down there. And we get there and we packed all of his daughter's stuff up. And we hung out with him. We had meals.
Great human.
That's a great human. And he's made such a huge impact on my life in multiple different ways that I can't even explain. Yeah. But it was just cool that someone would do that and treat 17-year-olds, 18-year-olds. We were 18 at that time. Yeah. 18-year-olds, nonetheless. And so it was awesome.
Yeah. And wait, so did you guys then, where was she moving?
She was moving to Orlando, but we had to come put all of her stuff in a storage facility. Oh. And so then when Kyle and Ryan went to college in Tampa, Randy pointed me out because I was still around, kind of. He's like, now you get to come help me solo. And that was kind of a different experience. Not as fun without the other buddies. But it was still good. Yeah. I'd do it again with them.
Yeah, that's incredible. Yeah. Randy Smith is someone we will have on this podcast at some point.
You got to be careful with it.
He's a character, but he knows he's a character. And but I will say Randy is just incredible from top to bottom, how positive he is and funny and can make light of literally any situation. Yeah. So yeah, great guy. And but yes, go check him out at the Southwest campus and let him know that you were encouraged by Luke and Emery to come see him. He'll appreciate it. Yeah, man, I think that'll probably do it for us today, Emery. I appreciate you hopping on here with me.
Dude, thank you.
Great conversation. There will probably be a part 2 where it's just all American Idol, and we just talk all about Lionel and Luke and Katy Perry. It'll be great. But anyway, thank you for coming on. Thank you guys for listening, and we will catch you guys next time. See ya.